The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Josh Shigala from the Standard.io.
Yo, folks, welcome.
Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Buongiorno.
And perhaps joining us later, Ben Ark from LN Bits. Meanwhile, I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 1. Issue 1, SEC spells out Bitcoin ETF concerns to asset managers. That's right, the SEC is pulling the football back on Bitcoin once again. They're concerned about the possible security of the Bitcoin and say that the details provided by BlackRock were not adequate. The price of Bitcoin is still up, but the ETF is in doubt again. Meanwhile, Kathy Ark and Ark Shares have also filed for their own ETF, and Fidelity and others have also filed. Josh Shigala, what do you think? Have they pulled the football out on Bitcoin once again, or will we finally get that sweet, sweet stock market money?
Well, I guess we were wrong last week, weren't we? We all said that we're going to get it. I don't know. I just think the SEC's just made up of total inept nonsense, and I don't know. I think it's a good thing that Bitcoin doesn't have an ETF in the US anyway, because it allows massive manipulation of the price and control of the price, kind of like the dog wagging the tail kind of thing, where the Wall Street is the dog and Bitcoin becomes the tail. No, the tail wagging the dog. You know what I'm trying to say here. It's just that if you have something that's much larger attached to Bitcoin, then that much larger thing can control it a little bit more. So I'm not a big fan of it anyway. I just think Bitcoin needs to do what it needs to do. It needs to make allow people to trustlessly move money around and value and be able to save. And now with all the ordinal stuff and some of the other signature stuff, maybe create NFTs and maybe bring in DeFi, so we can build things like what we're building at the Standard over on Bitcoin eventually.
Dan Eve, it sounds like they're saying no to Josh, and he's saying, we don't need you anyway. What do you think?
Well, I still like the kind of seal of approval that that BlackRock and Fidelity and Co. like trying to do a Bitcoin spot ETF gives Bitcoin. The fact that it's it's for no coiners who don't believe in Bitcoin or think that it's like just this airy fairy magic internet money. It kind of shows that it's being taken seriously by the biggest asset managers in the world. So I think that's a good thing. But the SEC rejecting it, I mean, I'm with Josh. I think that like they're just a crazy outfit making silly decisions. I don't know. I think the fact that they're saying that the markets can be manipulated, well, we've all seen that many markets around the world are manipulated, and it's very clear that still happens now. And the fact that there's Bitcoin is traded in so many different markets. It's not like in terms of exchanges. Sorry, it's not like that it would take a very coordinated attack to manipulate all the markets, right? You could probably get some bad actors in certain big exchanges, but ultimately there's a lot of Bitcoin exchanges around the world, so it has to be quite a big coordinated attack. Also, the more of these larger institutions that are into Bitcoin and whether it's spot or futures, the more manipulation that's got to be done. So I kind of think that argument's waning a bit. That it used to be when you could only buy Bitcoin on Coinbase and a few others, then maybe that was a bit of an argument. But now that there's so many places where you can buy Bitcoin, I think that argument is kind of dwindling. But yeah, we'll see what the SEC comes up with. They haven't rejected Fidelity's yet. Is it just BlackRock's that's been rejected?
Oh, it hasn't even been rejected. They just want more information.
They just want clarity.
But I'm not sure that there's so many places to buy Bitcoin when so many still buy it through Binance, right? There's so much of the market going through Binance. But personally, at this point, I'm immune to the SEC's rejections of ETF. I've had ETFs rejected so many times. I just brush it off my back and I move on to the next ETF. You know, it doesn't matter what company it is. Could be ARC shares, could be Fidelity, maybe get some Goldman Sachs in there. It doesn't matter to me. JP Morgan, you know, all the best seem to want to trade Bitcoin on the stock market, and Bitcoin just doesn't want to be traded on the stock market. What can we say? Like, they've had their chance. There was many times where like, oh, the ETF will come and all these workers who have their investment money will invest their retirement into Bitcoin and maybe it'll go up and they'll make a fortune. But maybe we're beyond that point now. And we're at the point, like Josh is saying, where yes, it is another liquidity pool that would be delicious and delightful, but maybe we don't need it. And it doesn't seem like that matters or not, because I don't think we're going to get it. It doesn't look like an ETF. But now, exit question, Josh Agala, predict the future. Will the Bitcoin ETF be approved? Yes or no?
I mean, eventually it will be. It'll just be that they'll be the lawyers and the SEC will extract so much money until they just do. And then, yeah. But what I want to do, what I want to hear is your best SEC voice there, Thomas.
Let's see. We have one more.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
So they always have more to print. Dan, Eve, will there be a Bitcoin ETF? Yes or no?
Yeah, but maybe not this year. I think the SEC's like they're on a high horse at the moment, rejecting and battling Coinbase and battling Bittrex and battling Binance. So you know, I think they're kind of feeling pretty good, right, about themselves right now. They can be like rejecting people like that hot lady at the bar or hot man at the bar, depending on which bar, or maybe not a bar at all. I don't know. Any bar can go, or no bar. Well, it's 2023. But they're just rejecting people and they don't care because everyone's coming up to them. They're like, hey, let me buy you a drink. And the SEC's like, no, thanks, no. So I think they're going to keep on rejecting because they're kind of a bit giddy at the moment with their power.
And once again, the Bitcoin doesn't care. Blocks keep being produced. People keep mining it. People keep trading it. It keeps having a value. All these things are happening to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin doesn't care. Moving on to issue 2. No Bitcoin left to buy. What's happening to Bitcoin's available supply? Yes, the overall amount of Bitcoin left to buy on exchanges is shrinking, but is this a good thing? Usually when there's a supply shock and there are no Bitcoin left to buy, the price would rise, but it is possible if there's a lack of interest. If the supply shock happens during a bear market, it actually could be negative and bad for Bitcoin. That is to say, the price of Bitcoin. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Bitcoin being left on exchanges? Is it a market sign, or is it more people hodling and using private wallets to hold their keys?
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both, but we've had a few big shock events recently, even especially from the lending scene with like BlockFi and Celsius, that you're really at risk. Like people are really at risk by keeping their coins on exchanges. You know, even wasn't it Jesse from Kraken was saying, look, you know, use this as an exchange, but keep your coins offline. And whilst you've got CZ Binance who said something crazy like, oh, you know, it's not safe storing your keys, you can't trust yourself, or something along those lines, right? It's definitely becoming more evident that one of the key principles of Bitcoin is not your keys, not your coins. And by keeping your coins on the exchange, you have the third party risk. So I think that message is spreading and getting really kind of embedded in people's minds. Also, there's like not just Trezor and Ledger, there's loads of different hardware wallets now, and they're each doing their own sort of bit to promote the fact that you should be holding your own coins, which is really good. And really safe and healthy for the ecosystem. So maybe it's just that as we're maturing this, and obviously a combination of the hodl factor, right? Everyone's saying hodl, hodl, hodl. So you've got to, you know, hodl your Bitcoin, and the best way to do that is by keeping it yourself. So maybe there's all these kind of factors are sort of ingrained in people's minds now, even that when they're trying to get into Bitcoin, first of all, it wasn't a minefield of advice when, in 2013, 2014, all the years up to now. There's some very kind of strict information that if you're a Bitcoiner that you research when you're buying Bitcoin, and there's a lot of information out there that straight away says, look, you've got to keep your coins in your own private wallet for the removing the third party risk. So yeah, I think it's a good thing ultimately. And obviously drying up supply means that there's less liquidity to buy, means that obviously there's potentially a bit more volatility, right? Because big sales will impact the markets a bit more. Big buys will also impact the markets a bit more. So we might see some of those big old friendly green dildos that we used to see.
Well, not your keys, not your coins is a good slogan, but I prefer I lost my keys in a boating accident. And it wasn't a boat, it was a yacht. Josh Agala, what do you think about this? Bitcoin supply shock? No Bitcoin left to buy?
But it also depends. Is there also a shock on the other side? Like, do people want to buy the stuff? So I would say yes. There's always people wanting to buy it, and it's no wonder that there's a supply shock. There's only 21 million of these things, and of course there's more with certain exchanges rehypothecating and stuff like that. Oh, good day, Ben. And so yeah, it's I would say there's definitely a supply shock. There can definitely be a supply shock. It's quite easy. There's so few of these things. When people truly grasp how little 21 million is in terms of we're so used to bantering around the word billions. I mean, the word billion is so really malunderstood. Like it's not something that should be bantered around very often because it's such a massive number. And now trillions is being pumped out constantly. Like that's a normal thing to say. I mean, there's not even a trillion stars, like apparently, it's like it's just silly numbers. So yeah, of course there's a supply shock. It's 21 million.
Yes, of course there are billions and billions of stars. Josh, what do you think? I've heard that it's not the retail market buying this time. Do you think that could be a problem?
I think it's always the retail market buying. I think that's the main buyers. I think anything like large institutions, I know that makes headlines, but I don't think they're the major buyers. I think the major buyers are small players, millions and millions of small people buying small amounts. And that's also why there's a supply shock, because when there's millions and millions of small people buying rather than large players, then it's better for the network too, by the way. It's better for the network because these large players like Elon that come along and buy a whole crap load of it and then just dump it all when they're having a bad day. It's not good. So the more the merrier.
All right, Josh, let me put you on the spot here, give you a chance to criticize Satoshi. 21 million, too little coins? Would you prefer 21 billion or another number?
No, because the thing is, it's divisible by 8 decimal points. So there's so many, it's just silly that you could actually supply the entire world with one Bitcoin and it would be enough. So it would just be way, 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 way more expensive.
So Ben Ark, we're talking about the possibility of a supply shock on the exchanges. There's just not enough Bitcoin to buy. What do you think is happening with the Bitcoin supply? And could it be related to the halvening in 43,387 blocks, about 301 days, 7 hours, 9 minutes, and 48 seconds away?
Sneaking up on us at halvening, isn't it? Yeah, we've spoken about it before. It's that hodler bedrock, which just more people tune in to Bitcoin and Bitcoin's value proposition, and then they want to get involved in it. And the community of Bitcoin just grows. And like, I'm always amazed, like even now, we're still kind of in a bear market. You go to a conference or you go to a meetup and there's just this incredible wealth of talent and people who really know what they're talking about when it comes to Bitcoin. And that didn't used to be the case a few years ago. The people are so well informed now. And there's just so many Bitcoiners. And I think, like Josh said, it's just regular normal people buying up Bitcoin, which is limiting the supply. And it's just that the hodler bedrock, they're going to hold on to those Bitcoin. They understand the value of it. They understand its potential to make the world a better place, and they want to hold on to it, and they want to be part of that journey. And they're not going to sell it. If it drops to $1,000, they won't sell it. And it's that obviously you shake out a few of those people every time it dips too much. But considering where we are now, and the strength of the Bitcoin ecosystem, Bitcoiners are which actually just have Bitcoin and just holding them no matter what. I think it's very encouraging. And in that article, it said that it doesn't necessarily mean that the price would go up if there was a limited supply or a shortage of Bitcoin on the market. But I think that's nonsense. It's supply and demand, the basic rules of supply and demand. Of course, the price is going to go up. And also, as Josh said, it's divisible to 8 decimal places, and in Lightning we have millisats, so that's another 3 decimal or 4 decimal places. And you could go even smaller if you wanted to. So Lightning could decide to, use millisats, I suppose, and you could just infinitely keep dividing it for as much as the world needs Bitcoin. So yeah, it's kind of an inevitable symptom of Bitcoin's success that the supply on the market is going to be limited, which is good because it means there's less silly traders who can splash about with it and fiddle the price and make the price go up and down. And hopefully it means that we'll end up with a steadier price, obviously on the upward trend, but it means we're going to have less price volatility as time rolls on.
Ben, also while you're here, get your opinion on the SEC, who said that the ETF plans were not sufficiently clear and comprehensive. So a bit of a possible roadblock for the ETFs that may have launched last week's exciting price rally.
Yeah, I haven't read much about that one, but these ETFs, one day we will celebrate a Bitcoin ETF, a proper Bitcoin ETF on this show, and that'll be a good day.
Someday. Moving on to the exit question, predicting the price of Bitcoin against the Bitcoin predictor ball, the greatest source of all truth in this universe. Dan Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
I'm going with higher again. Yeah.
Josh Shigala, higher or lower?
Higher.
Ben
Ark, higher. Is it all optimism on this panel?
I don't want to break the trend. Yeah, higher supply and demand. People of the bits. It's going to go up.
There's no way the ball is going to stand for this. Higher all around. And the ball predicts... It is certain that the price of Bitcoin will be higher according to the Magic Bitcoin Predictor Ball. Meanwhile, check out
buy some of those non-existing Bitcoin that you can't get right now.
That's right. Go get those sats before the exchanges run out. Meanwhile, on this day in 2021, you could check out the LN Bits Extension Streamer Copilot and accept tips far before all this Zaps nonsense. In 2020, you could check out Good Morning Bitcoin and the News. The price of Bitcoin was $9,181 back then. An interview with Tone Vase, Peter Todd, and Dan Eve. You could check out the Understanding Malta Bitcoin Conference, Understanding Bitcoin with Kevin Loisek, Bitcoin's Second Coming and the Coinbase Outage. In 2018, we had Bitcoin Talk Show, Bitcoin surging 10% with your calls. 2018, the Bitcoin Group number 148, Who Controls Bitcoin, and a story about Vitalik. We had Let's Talk Segwit 2X with Jimmy Song and Eric Lombroso. And in 2016, the Dow Hack, Truth, and Time Travel on You, Me, and Bitcoin. We had Bitcoin and Altcoin Trading Talk number 32. In 2014, finally, we had Mini Bits, Coin Buzz, which seems like it was some kind of news website that doesn't exist anymore.
I just want to say, this is like the
day.
Wayback Machine for Bitcoin, Thomas. This is just such extraordinary stuff. Well done. I think it's one of these things that's very, very valuable for the Bitcoin community. Just to
isn't it amazing and fascinating? And so many, I mean, and like I haven't even seen these ones, and I'm sure they're good. And then some of these I'm in, and some I'm not in, and just what a great resource. And shout out, of course, to DJ Booth, who helped build this website and helped us build this calendar recently. Where you can scroll through and you can see, like, on the 15th of January, what shows did we do? And here, we did 2 in 2014, won in these years, and then here are all those shows right there.
Man, what a guy. DJ Booth for the win.
You can definitely get an interesting view of the World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com for free. Moving on to issue 3, crypto execs offer Africans a lifeline from inflation and corruption. Crypto solves real-world problems with banking and currencies on the continent and isn't the casino that it can feel like sometimes in the West. Real-world use cases for Bitcoin in Africa. Ben Ark, what do you think about Bitcoin and Africa?
Yeah, it's every time I've spoken to anyone using Bitcoin, operating Bitcoin, or engaging with the some of the countries in Africa, like Nigeria, on Bitcoin, it's always made me incredibly bullish and grateful that I get to work on this technology, which is benefiting people who it needs to benefit. And talk about shitcoins. They have some real shitcoins there, and price fluctuation for them is nothing. They're some of the hyperinflation and issues they have around inflation. So no, it's a part of Bitcoin's ecosystem, which for a long time was really not really thought about. Like, it was just people would cater to the to the more developed countries with more developed economies. But like, it's great, and it's that someone who is maybe completely unbanked suddenly gets access to this whole world of currencies which they can trade and they can do commerce with, and they can onboard and have access to. And then with the Lightning stuff now, they can do micropayments, and they can build all these services. And yeah, it's an incredibly empowering tool. And just more and more, I'm hearing that story coming out of Africa, that it's definitely something which is being used there. And I think now more and more companies are starting to cater services for that market, which is great.
Well, and part of this article I want to highlight that was really good, the guy was talking about the internet and how Africa really didn't get in on the internet revolution of the 90s, but now, because of the phones and the infrastructure, they are in a position to get in on the crypto revolution. So it is possible that we would see a worldwide awakening of people rising in their stature and their ability because of access to banking, access to interest, access to a place you could hold your money without having it destroyed by inflation or warlords or bank haircuts or collapse of governments, things like this. You can extract the monetary system, and whatever happens in the political system happens. You still have your monetary system. You've separated the two.
I want to give a shout out as well to a great project. I can't remember the name of the guy who runs it. It's called koala.dev. And it's a great project, and it's Bitcoin for Africa by Africans. So it's African developers and people building services within Africa for Africans. And I think it's just a really inspiring project. So everyone go check out that. It's koala.dev, QALA.dev.
That sounds great, Ben. And of course, this reminds me of Bitcoin's kind of original vision, the things we used to talk about with Andreas Antonopoulos, where he would say lines that he then repeated often about how Bitcoin's not just for the first world, and Bitcoin is for the developing world, and it's for the people who need help and don't have access, like Americans and other people do, to a working financial and credit system that everyone complains about, but it generally works. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Africa and the chance that Bitcoin, and especially the Lightning Network, which allows you to send around small amounts of Bitcoin, even save small amounts of Bitcoin without using your local currency, what will that do for the future?
Well, we've said before that a lot of us here were we're got into Bitcoin because of the fact that it was like the internet, the currency of the world, right? It wasn't controlled by any particular government, and it would get the unbanked on board. And so I think it's great to see, like, even I think it was 40 in the article says 47% of Nigerians own or interact with crypto on a daily basis, which is actually huge. It's like way more than any Western country. So it's incredible that's proliferating over there. And you've had is it Kenya that has the phone credit system? So they were able to use trade phone credits if they were unbanked. So Lightning taking over and being a part of that's great. Obviously, there's still for anyone getting on board with Bitcoin, there's the risk that of the volatility. So especially if you're someone like, you know, if you're someone in a rural area and you're putting all of your money in Bitcoin, when you need it, it's on a little bear market. So there's still that risk involved. But the fact that it can get everyone connected and they can send a payment, you know, over the other side of the world for microsats, is just absolutely amazing. So I think it's a great technology, and it's great to see that there's lots of like different grassroots kind of movements over there, like building these different services. And we're seeing like, you know, as Ben was saying, like, you know, developers like, you know, building their own applications to suit their own needs, because obviously it's different from the West, right? You go, oh yeah, that'll be great for Africa, and you don't really know their particular use cases. So to see and to hear about developers locally like building things that are suiting them and helping their own communities and economies, it's great. And it's the kind of reason why, yeah, I got involved. It's like the world money, right? It's like the it can't be controlled by anyone. It's accessible by anyone. You can't have a bank that's rejecting you, or you haven't provided enough information and you haven't put enough selfies on your bank application to actually open an account. You don't need an account. You literally download an app. Obviously, I'd be interested to hear about the best ways of kind of buying Bitcoin over there, right? So what there must be kind of localized exchanges where they can swap whatever local currency it is for Bitcoin, or maybe they use Coinbase or something, I don't know. But in that sense, they probably need to be banked in order to get the Bitcoin. So I'd like to know how the unbanked are able to get Bitcoin whilst being unbanked as well. Because I'm sure there's a huge market there to, you know, to
remember the best way to get Bitcoin is to work for it. You get a job or you exchange your skills for some Bitcoin by someone else, and how they discover and get the Bitcoin, that's their problem, right?
Yeah. I think one other thing is that in the article it said something like, oh, it said Africans are used to bad governments that aren't accountable and transparent. But I suddenly thought to myself, with the British government in the state it is, it's pretty much definitely not accountable and transparent, but probably not to the same level, right? Because I think we've got a lot more things like regulation over here. But it's great to see innovation, like, you know, Bitcoin being innovated over there and not being stifled by regulation. I think there are some countries that still ban it in Africa. So it's, I think, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Gabon, Guyana, Lesotho, Libya, Zimbabwe. So there's quite a few, but obviously that's not all of Africa, which is great. And the main thing is that it's the governments are seemingly a bit more open to building Bitcoin infrastructure, as they should be, because why, you know, rely on either the dollar or have to look to, you know, have a potential hyperinflation like Zimbabwe had, where they were literally, you know, being able to burn money for warmth, or well, maybe not, because it was Africa, probably not that cold there, but yeah, you know what I mean. You don't want hyperinflation. It's bad hyperinflation.
Another point though, there's like a huge amount of natural resources, and solar, and actually there's that great project by Obi as well. Obi's involved in. Yeah, no, not that. The one where he's they're helping. So a lot of like little townships, they just have a small hydro station, and then they're not that efficient, these hydro stations. So they're going and saying, look, we'll make this hydro station better, and you'll have more electricity, but we're going to take half the electricity to mine Bitcoin for a few years to pay for it. And that's been really successful in rolling out some nice renewable mining, Bitcoin mining.
Well, I think, as Dan was saying, the great part about this is that you want to get a gift for Africa and you don't know what they want. And it turns out you give them money, right? And everybody loves money, right? Like they said in the heist movies, like that's why they call it money. But not just, you know, money like a gift card or money like foreign aid or something like that. Actually a money system, and a thing that you can use independent of your government, independent of your banks. And once you get a little bit involved in it, it can be a savings institution, a way to send money, a way to get money from people overseas, family members. Josh Shigala, what do you think of Bitcoin and Africa, the developing world?
It's always, like Ben said, it's always been the promise. And I think this was one of the reasons why a lot of Bitcoiners got felt well, kind of depressed and yeah, like they felt that it was unfair that the blockchain didn't scale the way that it was promised. So people like Roger Ver and stuff on base layer, and they didn't quite understand all the amazing stuff that's going to come with Lightning Network, but they were sort of promised that it would scale on base layer, and you would always have the unbanked and the people living on $1 a day being able to actually transact with the world and partake in the global world that we live in finance. So it was hard. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Blockchain Summit.Africa. It'll be held in Ghana by a friend of mine there called Philip, who's been in crypto. He's an OG, been living in Ghana and working in Bitcoin for years and years. He's putting on that event, and it's going to be amazing. It's at the Ghana University, over 1,000 people going already. It's going to be massive. And so I'm very excited about that. I'll probably be speaking there. I have to sort out my dates because there's a bunch of stuff happening in my personal life around that date. But let's see, and maybe I can convince Ben, Dan, and Thomas to come. Let's see.
Where is it, Ghana?
Yeah, it's in Ghana.
Is that south?
Yeah. Yes.
What's your geography like?
It's west. It's shit. My geography is shit. I've never been in any country in Africa, so yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. If
Like Midwest.
Yeah, I thought it was west. Yeah.
There's also Bitcoin. Another shout out to another great project in Africa, Bitcoin Akazi, which is EKASI, and that's building a Bitcoin economy in a township, South African township, and that's been very successful. It started by a surfer. And then he just started building this Bitcoin, and it's a circular economy. Like, it works. Like, they're using it, for paying for stuff, for groceries in the grocery shop. And yeah, that's another great project to take a look at. What's the conference called in Ghana called?
It's called Blockchain Summit.Africa.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely try and make that.
Dan, do you have a favorite project in Africa or something you've been keeping an eye on?
I actually, oh God, I actually don't know. I think no, I don't actually. I don't thinking of favorite project anywhere, right? I think it's because
we had the Bitcoin lady, Alakani, I think her name was, and she's doing great work. She's got a little Bitcoin center down there, and I think they're teaching kids to program, teaching kids the basics of Bitcoin, and also with things like a solar panel generator, a little battery power. They're providing power and things for their village. And I don't know any details, but I've heard that Chris Ellis of the World Crypto Network is somewhere in Africa and presumably doing good and doing all kinds of administration and important tasks to help people with Bitcoin, as well as maybe just organizing other aspects of their life. I don't know. I think they put him in charge of the whole country. I hope to see the movie soon. But shout out to Chris and to everybody else who's doing great things for Africa and other places. It might not be as rewarding as working at a startup. And I think like Josh was saying, the original Bitcoiners were upset with the scaling and perhaps the loss of focus on, one Bitcoin, one person, and really spreading it out, things like that. But I also think that it was the startups and the altcoins, and that suddenly we were more about getting smart contracts and getting DAOs that weren't really DAOs, and contracts that weren't really contracts that could then be rolled back, and making tons and tons of money off of each iteration of those things, whether we called them ICOs or DAOs or DeFi or whatever the new phrase is. And that really the money side of the world got into Bitcoin much more than the helping people side of the world. In fact, the helping people side of the world got mad at Bitcoin because of the environmental potential. So isn't it interesting to see one side not really engaging with it? I've been talking to some people, they're working on a progressive Bitcoin podcast. And it's interesting to think that it's difficult to do this and even to discuss these ideas because Bitcoin is kind of really all right wing, all libertarian, all like financial people, all that kind of thing. Josh, what do you think about this? That like one side is totally engaged and the other side is non-engaged to their detriment, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's always been bipartisan. It's not really cared about that, but it has always attracted the more libertarian mindset because they were the ones that understood the value proposition first, because it was like, oh, I don't need a state. Whereas a lot of left-leaning people, especially, I mean, you read Marx, if you want to go full radical left, it's about destroying and giving all power to one central bank and having, so they naturally sort of head towards that. But it's yeah. So, but I think but then you get other
that administration. If you were going to say having everything in central control where you can do the levers and control the things, Bitcoin is leverless, right? We said earlier 21 million coins, no adjustment. That destroys Keynesianism, right? Like
Marx and Engels had a fabulous concept called the withering of state, which is that when that stuff happens, then the state will become superfluous because everything will just run itself. So, and it's like, how do you do that?
I think the libertarians were cheering this, and the leftists were horrified, and this horrification caused them to take a step back and to wait. Whereas I think
which is annoying because actually,
Bitcoin's inevitable, and you have to engage as soon as possible because the machine is ongoing, and your potential for influence is getting less and less and less. But
which is it's annoying on the left side because what does Bitcoin do best? It withers state, withers the power of state. So, which is a Marx and Engels concept. So really, those commies should get on board, stop whinging.
See, there it is. The appeal is there. They just haven't found it yet. But I think we're going to move on to the next issue. Issue 4, is Bitcoin growing centralized? The impact of Michael Saylor's Bitcoin buying spree. Yes, Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy has been buying Bitcoin every chance he can get and doing it with debt. Its recent purchase of 12,333 Bitcoin at an average price of 28,136 a coin reaffirms their bullish stance on crypto. They now have 152,333, interesting numbers, Bitcoin acquired at an average price of 29,668. Josh Shigala, what do you think? Is Bitcoin centralized? Or perhaps in a larger issue, is this a problem for Bitcoin that one company, one man could control so many bits?
Well, effectively, this is a Bitcoin ETF. If you want to call it that or not, I mean, that's effectively what it is, because you buy shares in his company and he buys Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and it goes up or down according to the price and the value. So, and we said it before, that the more these ETFs are around, the more that they can control Bitcoin. The good thing is that we haven't seen that happen before. And in the early days, there's always been kind of whales in Bitcoin. And it's actually there's been more and more wallets created over time, not less and less. Of course, you have these whales, but, like in the early days, we had 50 to 100 people with wallets, and then you had 200 people, and then you had 2,000 people. And so, and the wider the amount of people there is, the less each wallet has in it. But that spread becomes wider. Of course, you get the oddball like Michael Saylor, but I think he'll be laughing all the way to the bank in this next bull run. The problem is he could potentially end any bull run that comes along by slowly DCAing out, if he doesn't do that properly, by dumping on a whim because his shareholders freak out and go, "Dump now, Michael." He might pick up that phone and actually do that dumping. So yeah, it's better to obviously to have many more stakeholders rather than just a few massive whales. But there could be the same for massive exchanges. But yeah, I'm quite surprised that he could get hold of so many, because apparently that article said there's no Bitcoin to sell.
Ben Ark, the article says that Bitcoin is centralized. Do all the transactions go through Saylor? Does he get a say or a vote over who I can send money to?
It's also not. It's not Michael Saylor's Bitcoin, is it? So it's MicroStrategy's Bitcoin. So it's not his own Bitcoin, but as a percentage, it's not that bad. It's still under 1%. So the Gemini brothers had 1% at one point, and I think they probably spent it. And that's the point. Like, you spend your Bitcoin, it's finite. You can't. The ultimate point behind Bitcoin is your little cabal of insiders can't create more of the stuff. So everyone has a price. At some point, he will sell the Bitcoin, and that'll make its way back into the ecosystem. There's this idea that this idea is kind of faded out, but there was this idea that these huge whales who would just always control Bitcoin because they have all the Bitcoin from the beginning, but they spend it all. Like, we know them. We know these whales. Like, we've met them. We know who they are. Like, these people who had thousands, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, and they spent them, and now they have a modest, stash of Bitcoin, and that's what will happen eventually to Saylor. But yeah, he's going to be laughing all the way to the bank. Of course, it's a good play.
It's interesting to think that someday in the future, everyone will own Bitcoins that were once owned, like, by Michael Saylor, the same way that in Washington, D.C., all the bills were covered with cocaine. It'll just be a little trace element of Saylor in every wallet. Dan, Eve, what do you think? Is it bad for Bitcoin? Is he like Darth Vader? He's going to come in here, I own all the coins, like Bitcoin is mine now.
Yeah, I think I'm with the rest of the panel. It's not as bad as is sort of being made out. It's not just Saylor. It's not, I'm assuming it's likely it's not just him that holds the keys, right, for the whole of MicroStrategy's holdings, right? So it's not going to be
he holds them on a very special yacht.
Yeah,
it's unsinkable
on a very special treasure.
It might be called Titanic.
But as Ben said, it's still less than 1%. So of current supply, it's 0.78%. Of final supply of 21 million, it's 0.73%. And obviously that's still a reasonable amount, right, for one entity to control that amount of Bitcoin. But I don't know how much Bitcoin Binance has got, but I'm sure it's probably quite a lot of Bitcoin right now. And there could be all sorts of stuff going on there, same as these other exchanges that have got consolidated Bitcoin. So it's naturally just going to even out over time, because as I think Jocelyn said, everyone has their price, right? They're gonna sell out at some point. They won't be holding it forever, so it's just going to generally even out. There's going to be shareholder pressure. There'll be just times they want to actually cash out, maybe give some dividends, something crazy like that, to the shareholders. So it will peter out over time, but ultimately, I don't think that number's gonna grow, such a huge amount, especially if Bitcoin does pump, right? Are they gonna be buying more Bitcoin and more Bitcoin as when it's 60,000, when it's $100,000? Or are they going to be, just holding their bags right now? And obviously, there's going to be other institutions that want to buy. And we've said that the exchanges are kind of dried up at the moment, but I'm sure a lot of these trades that are happening, especially the high volume trades, on high amount trades, they're going to be personal, single holders, or there'll be maybe multi-sig holders that don't want to actually put their coins on an exchange because they don't trust them anyway. So there'll be people buying and selling Bitcoin behind that. We don't even know. There could be multiple people. The thing is about Bitcoin, it's a transparent blockchain. There could be multiple people who still own more than 1% right now. And obviously the most obvious one is Satoshi's coins, which is what, 1 million out of the 21 million. So and because we can do all sorts of chain analysis, but we don't know that Josh isn't sat on 500,000 Bitcoin right now. So or Ben hasn't got 750,000 Bitcoin just in his little offline wallet. So that's the kind of glory about it, that you can be anonymous to a certain level. What's interesting about this is that it's a very public company, that their assets are very widely known, that he shouts about every time that they buy or acquire Bitcoin. There's obviously an argument at the moment as to people going, he didn't buy it, he acquired it because it was via debt and blah, 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 blah. But ultimately they have that amount of Bitcoin. So it's kind of the lesser of two evils, right? Would you want to, is it better to know when someone's got 150,000 Bitcoin and it's a company that has all sorts of procedures and stuff around it? Or is it better to, not know that some random guy has got 150,000 Bitcoin, or girl, or they, has got an alien, has got 150,000 Bitcoin, and they can just dump it any time on loads of exchanges and cause chaos and be like, fuck everyone. So I don't know. I think, yeah, it's kind of a good thing that he's publicizing it so much, because it's going to be under a lot of eyes, right? At least everyone knows about it. They can monitor it. They can sort of see where that Bitcoin is moving, and yeah, and the market has a bit of an opportunity to react to it.
Well, Dan, I have spoke to the exchanges, and while they are short on supply, none of them are drying up. They are youthful and full of vigor, and just delightful young exchanges, excited about the future. But I love MicroStrategy. I love the name of it, and I love the idea that he's using debt to buy Bitcoin. If I was a big Wall Street guy or a Silicon Valley guy with all the success under my belt, and I could generate hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in loan that I could use to buy Bitcoin, that's exactly what I would do. And then if I could name it MicroStrategy, which seems just like microphallus or just like a very simple plan, I would do that as well. And if it succeeds, what a note in the history books that MicroStrategy was such a simple strategy by buying Bitcoin succeeded in the future. Like if you look at this long term and you're a hardcore Bitcoiner or you believe in this thing, then you say what he's doing is by taking on the debt, he's blowing up the Bitcoin bubble, right? He's saying, this is how much wealth we can store in Bitcoin. And every time someone does this from the traditional world, the Bitcoin bubble keeps getting bigger and they keep getting less Bitcoin for their wealth, for their debt. So in the same way that we've always wanted to see the gold market shift into Bitcoin, Saylor, by taking just a little bit of the VC debt market and putting it into Bitcoin, shows us an example of what could be. And if we see several other institutions take Saylor's approach, blow up their own little Bitcoin bubble, and then the Bitcoin gets bigger and bigger, this is how we see things like $1 million a coin. And that we talk about all the time. We're like, it could be $1 million a coin. Well, it's going to have to be several of these wealth bubbles, all then not just buying it and selling it, freaking out like Tesla, but buying it, holding it long with the same the same MicroStrategy as Saylor, if the banks will adopt it. Josh Segala, what do you think? Go ahead.
And the interesting thing is, for those that don't know, MicroStrategy was there during the .com bubble as well. Like they've been around for years and years. They've got an old Super Bowl ad from back in the day when Pets.com was out and stuff. And so they've seen bubbles. You know, Michael Saylor understands bubbles and understands the risk of bubbles, especially in the tech world. And so if Michael Saylor is buying right now, I think it's a pretty good signal to the market to say, this guy's buying up. He understands bubbles. If you know, let's think he truly understands a bubble and he's doing that. Well, he obviously doesn't think this is a bubble right now.
This is the classic example and the chance to quote Heist again, where, you know, he's trying to be clever. I try to think of what someone smarter than myself would do, and then I do that. And it seems like Saylor and MicroStrategy seem the ultimate example of, like, when you're looking backwards and you're like, when did the big money get into Bitcoin? When did I miss my absolute last chance to get on the Bitcoin bus? And it seems like when this Saylor guy keeps borrowing and then just keeps pushing the entire stack of chips towards the table, like borrowing another giant stack, pushing them towards the center of the table. And if you just stay on the sidelines doing this, like, I don't know, it seems like a massive bull signal to me, but it also blends into the exit question. Who is better or worse for Bitcoin, Michael Saylor or CZ? And I want to keep in mind that one of these two tweets banal Bitcoin quotes with AI generated art all the time to a wacky clapping audience. Dan, Eve, which one is better or worse for Bitcoin, CZ or Michael Saylor?
Oh, I think that's really difficult, actually. I mean, well, I think, okay, so they're going on the Bitcoin only stance, right? Saylor is pretty much Bitcoin only, and whereas, you know, Binance is a shitcoin casino, and shitcoin casinos are fun. Like, obviously, you can, you know, you can come out and you've at the casino and you've lost a few pounds, but at the same time, you've had fun. So some people don't mind shitcoin casinos, but yeah, I think ultimately, right, it's got to be Binance, because in terms of risk, right, there's a lot more that can happen with Binance, I think, than can with MicroStrategy. And I know that obviously MicroStrategy got what 0.73% of the supply right now. But the current risk is I think a lot greater. Binance going down in a burning flames scenario is going to scare a lot of investors off. Whereas I don't think Saylor would be able to sell all the Bitcoin if he wanted to, in a short space of time. And even if he did, there'd probably be loads of silent buyers that would want to like absolutely lap it up. Whereas Binance going down would send ripples throughout the ecosystem. But more importantly, even though it is a shitcoin casino, it would scare off a bunch of people that otherwise would have been into Bitcoin. But they're like, oh, I don't, this Binance thing, I'm not going to get into it. Just like we've seen before with FTX and all the other kind of crazy exchanges, whenever they go down, everyone kind of gets cold feet, that's it, about maybe cold and wet feet about buying Bitcoin, because they're scared about where to buy it from and they could get stung and this, that, and the other. So I think CZ, I think, is probably the bigger faller of them all.
It does look really bad when a casino goes out of business. It's a real Taj Mahal situation. Josh Shigala, who's better or worse for Bitcoin? Michael Saylor with his ability to sell everything all at one time to buy the New York Yankees, or CZ, who's running exchange that's Seifu, but only exists on his laptop with no home country?
I think CZ's better. I know that's going to be controversial, but I think he's better because he allows thousands and thousands of people to buy Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and he up till now he's been a good actor. Like he's played the Bitcoin game of sort of not knowing where and when. He's played the regulatory arbitrage game pretty well. Sure, you can have people like Brian Armstrong who've gone full, I'm here, I'm base here, I've got everything here, and I'm going to play ball with all the regulators, and then get like slapped in the face every week by a regulator. He's managed to hold his ground, CZ, and feed Bitcoin, whereas Michael Saylor, he goes on, does all the talking points that we've talked about for many years, takes credit for it all, buys up Bitcoin for on behalf of his rich
Has
man.
fancy car, does not live with parents.
Yeah, that's right. And he's a relatively latecomer. Look, I don't want to bag on the guy. He's a cool guy. He says cool stuff. He's right into it. Good on him. But I think he should give props to some of the quotes that he gives to some of us old schoolers who he directly hears and repeats it, and everyone goes, wow, what a genius to him.
I wish we'd had Michael Saylor early on. The MicroStrategy is just so clear, and especially like you're saying, Josh, it is kind of like an ETF, but again, it's an ETF that comes too late. It's the same way that the TV gives you the information. When it's time to buy Bitcoin, they don't put the price on the screen because the price is low, and you'd never want to buy Bitcoin when it's so low. You're so stupid. But then when the price is high, the price is on the screen. They're showing you the stories. And the same way that early on, if you'd wanted to invest in MicroStrategy, it would have been called Pirate at 40. And the guy was running a legit straight up Ponzi scheme where you take the new money and pay off the old money. You take the new money, pay off the old money, and then when you run out, it's over. But again, if Pirate at 40 had just been Michael Saylor, and it had some serious financial backing where he could have afforded to just hold the coins and in a secure manner, which were many ifs down the road here, it's a similar plan. It's not that different. Ben Ark, it's time to choose Saylor or CZ. The board is split so far 1-1.
If Michael Saylor was here earlier, he wouldn't have any quotes, like Josh said, because he needs other people to come up with the juicy quotes.
Oh,
and then it would just be all the little infill quotes of Bitcoin is whatever, light, energy, whatever you want to put in there, just some big word. Bitcoin is energy, Bitcoin is light, Bitcoin is value. Bitcoin is, I don't know, fucking whatever, like all glazed over, staring right into your soul. Bitcoin is energy. Yeah, CZ. I think CZ is building stuff, and maybe the micro strategy is just the world's greatest pump and dump. But I suppose he would need to keep the price up to make profit. So maybe it's not a bad micro strategy, but maybe that's the micro strategy. He's just big pump and dump, and he's a big pump and dumper. Yeah, don't want to diss him too much because he just reached the masses with those quotes. But yeah, Josh is dead right there. He's a lot of those quotes are taken from others.
We do have news from the future that the same size briefcase that was used to carry the Bitcoin out of El Salvador is the same size briefcase that was used to carry the Bitcoin out of MicroStrategy. So yes, it could happen at any time, and it could be any sized briefcase, even as small as a Trezor or even a memorized key, a brain wallet. But the answer is, Josh got it earlier. It is CZ. He's the Steve Jobs of crypto. He's better than Brian, better than BTC-E, better than Big Vern and Cripsy and any others before. As Steve Jobs said, why join the Navy when you could be a pirate? And this whole time, CZ's been allegedly pretending to be respectable. I think he's been a pirate underneath all along with his brilliance of my exchange has no home. Therefore, why should we pay any taxes, et cetera, which is a great legal argument just as soon as you've got enough money for tons of fancy lawyers who would love to debate this all day in court. CZ is more interesting than Saylor, who, like we said, just seems to quote generic Bitcoin quotes from the past and have his own kind of insular conferences with his insular friends, almost similar to Madoff. You have to be on a special list to hang out with Saylor, and you're not on that list. But we're running out of time. Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say the funny thing is about CZ though, right? Is that so he has led this digital nomad life or company digital nomad, and back in the day, everyone would have been like, yeah, what a hero, escaping regulation, oh, we'll get him next time. But because obviously he takes shitcoins, a lot of the maxis are like, come on, regulators, get him, yeah, you get him, yeah, you get him, yeah, whoa, you get him now, you regulators, oh, that nasty man with the shitcoin casino. It's just so funny how the tides turn, right? But yeah, he would have been like a hero years ago of being escaping them, like an Indiana Jones of the Bitcoin world, just swinging away on a vine away from the regular.
Well, I do love that CZ runs a Bitcoin and, like Dan saying, a shitcoin exchange, but to do so he has to move around and be secret and all these things. Dread Pirate Roberts allegedly runs the Silk Road, a drug market exchange. Stays in one place, hardly moves around, has no funding, complete collapse, found in a library in San Francisco. So it's an interesting comparison. Josh, did you have more on this?
No. That's
we're gonna move on to predictions or story of the week. That's right. We're going to Dan Eve straight up for a prediction or a story of the week. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I'm gonna say story of the week. My non crypto. Was that I turned up, I went to my parents, and I was meant to take the kids to some sort of charity event. There was free sandwiches. So I had a long day. We took the kids to the beach with my dad, and I was looking forward to these sandwiches. I walked through this golf club where we'd gone to for this charity thing. And I had an early 40th birthday, 6 months early party arranged, which was really cool. And loads of it shocked the hell out of me. But and that's my story of the week. It was just really lovely. So yeah, my girlfriend organized it, and got loads of different people from crypto to uni to old workplaces and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. It was
hang on, 6 month early birthday?
Yeah, well, my birthday's on Christmas Day, and I'm always moaning that I never do anything. I always go to people's birthday things out for a meal, but I can't do anything on mine. We did a thing called for a long time. I say did a thing. We still do it now. It's called Danmas Day. So after at 8 o'clock on Christmas Day, it becomes Danmas Day, and so people leave their families. They leave all the people the oldies falling asleep after the Christmas meal, and they come have a right knees up at my house. So which has been cool, right? But obviously I still have a bit of a grumble. I'm going to everyone's birthday, but I don't get to go to my own birthday. I just kind of, It's like, so it was really lovely, like to see all
Cool.
these kind of people. So that was, that was my story. Very cool. It
Awesome.
was, just especially completely out of the blue. I was like, what the worst thing was, right? That I'd walk, it's right up a hill from like my parents. So I had like, one kid in the pram and the other one like was just walking along, but he was helping me push it, but he wasn't pushing it. He was like more holding on to the pram. Anyway, so I got up to the hill, like I was all sweaty, like I was really like not out of breath. I was getting all lightheaded, and as I walked through, as I started looking through the like this thing, I thought I saw my sister's reflection. I was like, "Fuck!" Like, oh god, I must have. Pardon me, I must have I'm near to passing out. I'm seeing things. My sister's in Bournemouth tonight or something. She said, and when obviously the doors opened, I saw all these people throughout my life, and I thought, I'm dead. Bollocks! I literally must have died going up the hill. I go, oh my god, oh, this is what the afterlife is like. That scene on Titanic where they're walking, there's like everyone, and I was like, oh great, this is it. I'm dead. That must have been a really taxing walk up the hill. But fortunately, I wasn't dead, and it was a surprise party.
That's amazing, Dan. What a great story. I was worried you're going to drop the baby carriage and it would roll down the hill. You're like, it was a great party, but the baby got 5 stitches. But no, happy unbirthday, Dan. That's great. You had a birthday in June. Very cool stuff. Josh Shigala, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
No, I mean, prediction was I was going to go give a talk at ETH Barcelona, but now our co-founder Ana Valdes is going instead of me, and I'm gonna sit this one out. But go to ETH Barcelona; it's going to be a great conference, and yeah, check it out.
That's a shame, Josh. Barcelona is wonderful, wonderful place. You're missing
I'm
out.
just too busy building product.
Ben Ark, a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Not really. A story of the week is being back on the show because I've just been so busy the past month. I went to the Oslo Freedom Forum, and then I went to Zurich for a workshop, and I went to Prague as well, to BTC Prague. So I was pretty exhausted after all that. But happy birthday, Dan! That's amazing. But yeah, no. So just happy to be in one place and have time to finally get back on the show, and it's great to be back.
It's good to have you back.
That's great, Ben. Sounds like some good travels, excellent times, and good to be out and about again. Just want to close the show, remind everyone of James Brown, his fantastic song, The Boss. As he said, paid the cost to be the boss, paid the cost to be the boss. I paid the cost to be the boss. Look at me. You know what you see? You see a bad mother. What a song. So check out James Brown and trying to listen to more James Brown. Spread the word about the greatness of James Brown. So thanks everybody for joining us. Give us a thumbs up down below. Add a comment afterwards. We do read your comments later on in the week. We're going to check out the chat after the show. And everybody have a good America Day out here. It's the 4th of July weekend in America. That means fireworks, mainly illegal, coming in these 4 directions around my house, which means the yearly tradition is to sit out there with the hose and to spray down the roof so there's not a fire. Because whether they're illegal or not, people love fireworks, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The amount of fireworks you can buy at home, and some of them go straight up into the sky and look beautiful, and the rest sideways into people's houses. Massive fires, and their hands explode. So, but the rest of it, hot dogs, hamburgers, barbecues, America Day. Everyone's celebrating the 4th of July. So thanks for joining us, and until next time. Bye.